Welcome back to the deep dive, where we perform emergency surgery on a mountain of source material to extract the most crucial life-saving knowledge for you. So, if you're trying to catch up on the latest in corporate security, maybe you're wrestling with vendor liability, or you're just intensely curious about what happens when a $28.3 billion acquisition neglects its digital plumbing, then this deep dive is custom made for you. Today, we are cracking open a pretty significant stack of sources, and they detail not one, but a massive, multifaceted data crisis involving Oracle Health.
Which is, of course, the huge entity that was formed after Oracle bought Cerner.
Exactly. And this is so much more than just a simple security failure. It's a really complex story about stolen credentials, targeted extortion.
And just glaring hypercompliance failures. It
Yeah.
really exposes that terrifying vulnerability you get when you're
Yeah.
holding millions of patient records on,
Right.
well, on outdated systems.
hmm
That's absolutely right. I think our mission today is to give you, the learner, a clear roadmap through all this chaos, because the sheer amount of information out there is just overwhelming.
Hmm.
So we need to unpack the intricate timeline, and this is the crucial part, differentiate between two distinct hacking incidents that used Oracle infrastructure almost at the same time.
Two separate incidents.
Yes. The first is the dedicated patient data-focused healthcare breach, and the second is a separate huge breach involving Oracle's legacy cloud credentials. They're related by the company name Oracle, but they're totally different in their targets and the risks they pose.
I see.
But the real value here, I think, is in the extraction. We have to pull out the crucial, actionable lessons that are kind of buried in the fallout, especially around HIPAA compliance and vendor responsibility.
So when you have a massive business associate like Oracle Health, where does the security responsibility actually lie?
Exactly. And why did the patient notification delay stretch for nearly an entire year for some of the hospitals? That delay, that's what really weaponized this whole thing legally.
And before we get into all the technical weeds, let's just absorb the potential scale of this disaster. To set the stage with the necessary shock factor.
Yeah, let's do it.
Information from attorneys who are involved in the class action lawsuits suggests the breach hit approximately 80 hospitals. 80? Across the United States.
80. That's a staggering number.
And one lawyer suggested that the total number of people affected whose, protected health information was siphoned off may ultimately be in the millions.
Millions. That just immediately highlights that core tension we see whenever these corporate giants merge.
And it really does.
It puts a spotlight right on that friction between, corporate growth strategies,
Yeah.
the rush to get a massive acquisition like Cerner done, and the non-negotiable security requirements that come with managing highly sensitive patient data.
So security becomes the afterthought.
It's often the afterthought, not the centerpiece, of these M&A integration plans. And that's where the trouble starts.
Okay, let's unpack this complexity right at the top then, because understanding the difference between these two incidents it's essential to understanding the risk.
Absolutely. The source material makes it abundantly clear we are dealing with two distinct, though, closely timed security incidents,
Yeah.
both involving Oracle-managed infrastructure.
And we can't conflate them, right? Because the targets, the data, the risks, they're all completely different.
Exactly. We can label them simply. Incident A, that's the direct healthcare crisis focused on patient data.
Okay, incident A.
And Incident B, the massive enterprise risk that comes from stolen corporate credentials.
Got it. So let's start with incident A, the Oracle Health/Cerner PHI breach. This is the big one that touches patient records and drove all the headlines.
It is. The sources tell us that this breach used stolen credentials, a key point to get access to legacy servers. And this happened on or around January 22nd, 2025.
And here's a detail that really speaks to, I think, a lack of monitoring. The security incident wasn't identified right away.
Not at all. Oracle Health detected this access almost a full month later, on February 20th, 2025.
A month.
In the context of a targeted attack where data is being actively exfiltrated. A 30-day lag between the intrusion and someone noticing, that's an eternity.
It gives the attacker a massive window of opportunity to just drain the whole data reservoir.
Completely.
And the technical target here, this is the core structural problem of the whole acquisition, isn't it?
It is. The hackers got into older servers from Cerner, the electronic health record company Oracle, bought for that staggering $28.3 billion back in 2022.
It's like buying a beautiful classic house, but leaving the electrical wiring from the 1970s in the basement where all your sensitive stuff lives.
That's a perfect analogy. The sources explicitly say these were legacy Cerner systems that had not yet been migrated to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. And this is precisely where all that patient data, the protected health information, the PHI, was stored.
And the motivation, unlike some of the state-sponsored stuff we see, this seems to be just purely financial, right? Extortion and ransom.
And purely financial. A threat actor known as Andrew is reportedly trying to extort Oracle Health customers.
The hospitals themselves.
The hospitals, exactly. Demanding millions in crypto to stop the stolen data from being published on dark web forums. The data was successfully exfiltrated, it was siphoned off, and now is being used as leverage against those 80 affected healthcare providers.
Which creates an immediate compliance and, a reputational disaster for them.
A total disaster.
And because this data, we're talking names, birth dates, medical images, diagnoses, is PHI, it automatically falls under the strict rules of IP2HI. So this whole failure becomes a regulatory nightmare.
Now let's pivot to Incident B, the Oracle Legacy Cloud credential breach. This happened a bit later, confirmed around April 2025, but it involved a totally different vulnerability and a different part of the Oracle ecosystem.
And this was aimed at their general corporate customers, not healthcare specifically.
Correct. The source material is very specific here. This incident involved 2 obsolete servers, which in this case from Red, Gen 1.
Also known as Oracle Cloud Classic historically.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, trying to decipher this, this is critical. This Gen 1 platform is a completely separate, older platform. It's distinct from their current modern flagship product, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI.
Which brings us to Oracle's strategic positioning on this, which some security researchers, I think Kevin Beaumont, he rightly called it clever wordplay about what actually constitutes the cloud.
He did. Oracle has unequivocally stated that OCI was not breached and no OCI customer data was viewed or stolen.
Okay, so they're technically defending OCI, their modern high-security flagship product. That's good marketing.
It is. But at the same time, they're minimizing the risk of a breach on Oracle-managed cloud services that they are now just labeling as obsolete servers or Gen 1.
But the reality is that this was still an Oracle-managed environment, and it contained sensitive customer enterprise data. They're just drawing a sharp technical line to shield their core product.
And limit their corporate liability exposure. It's a strategic move.
And the threat actor in this case was different too, right? Rose 87168.
Yes, and this actor claimed to be selling 6 million records from this legacy cloud. What makes this data so dangerous for corporate customers is the type of information compromised.
We're talking LDIT display names, email addresses, hashed passwords.
Right, and while Oracle correctly pointed out that the passwords were encrypted or hashed, making them unusable in their raw form, the sheer volume of that credential material is still a goldmine for attackers to use in social engineering or other targeted attacks.
And CloudSec researchers, they reviewed that data and said the severity was high, right? Potentially involving over 140,000 customers.
That's right. So this wasn't about patient health. It was all about corporate access.
So the critical risk from Incident B isn't immediate consumer identity theft. That's Incident A's problem.
No, Incident B is all about access. We're talking about sensitive credentials, usernames, email addresses, authentication tokens, and potentially even encryption keys. This is the fundamental toolkit for sophisticated threat actors to perform lateral movement inside corporate networks.
So they can escalate their privileges, establish long-term access.
Exactly. And this is why CIS, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, felt they had to issue a specific security alert about this credential exposure. It was that serious.
So to summarize that crucial distinction for you, Incident A is the PHI disaster. It's rooted in those legacy EHR systems from the Cerner deal, and it led to patient extortion.
And Incident B is the large-scale corporate credential theft from Oracle's obsolete cloud infrastructure, Gen 1, leading to broad enterprise risk, both rooted in outdated systems and both posing extreme but very different risks.
What's fascinating here is just how quickly the true scope of the healthcare breach Incident A expanded once the legal system got involved.
Oh, absolutely. The pressure revealed the enormous scale and, I think far more critically, the massive delay in getting any transparency to the actual victims.
So the confirmed scope, it paints a pretty grim picture of how far this spread. An attorney for one of the victims noted that Oracle Health's own lawyers indicated that an estimated 80 hospitals might have been affected.
80. from a single security incident.
Think about that. One compromised server environment affecting dozens of independent healthcare providers. That just suggests a really deep integration between those old Cerner servers and their client networks.
And we know this isn't just a hypothetical number. The source material gives us a clear list of specific providers that have publicly acknowledged the impact.
Right. They've started issuing the mandatory patient notifications. We have Lake Regional Health System in Missouri, OSF St. Clair Medical Center in Illinois,
Altman Health System in Ohio, and NKC Health in North Kansas City. These are the providers doing what they're legally required to do, notifying patients and offering complimentary credit monitoring.
And while the total number of people affected is still unknown, it could be in the millions, but we do have concrete figures from state attorney general reports.
Which are legally required, yeah?
Exactly. We know for a fact at least 14,485 individuals were confirmed, and that's just from 4 states. Massachusetts had over 6,500.
Texas had over 4,000, South Carolina almost 3,000, and Washington with 800. And those numbers, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
For sure. And the data that was compromised it's the most sensitive data an organization can hold.
It's not just your standard identifiers like names and social security numbers. It includes critical medical details, medical record numbers, specific diagnoses, medications, test results, even medical images.
Data that allows for long-term targeted medical fraud. It's not like a simple credit card theft.
Not at all. Now, here's a point of friction we should probably explore. The source mentions that as of the latest update, December 2025, there haven't been any known instances of data misuse.
That feels like a silver lining. But is it just a matter of time? Or is PHI just harder to monetize instantly than, say, a stolen credit card number?
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
Credit card numbers, they have a very short shelf life. They're monetized instantly on a dark web.
Yeah.
PHI, on the other hand, is a long-term asset. Attackers don't use it to buy a gift card right away. They use it for medical identity fraud, filing false insurance claims, obtaining controlled substances.
Things that take time to set up.
Exactly. And often aren't discovered until the victim gets a bill years later. So the lack of immediate misuse doesn't diminish the risk at all. It just changes the timeline of the risk, which is ongoing.
And that ongoing risk brings us directly to the core violation that's driving all the legal action. The notification delay.
The delay is everything here.
The incident was identified internally by Oracle Health on February 20th, 2025.
And the communication to the downstream victims was just agonizingly slow. The time lag is staggering. Providers like OSF St. Clair and NKC Health, they only got the list of affected individuals.
The names and contact info they needed to actually do the notification?
Yes. They only got that in November of 2025.
That is an 11-month delay after Oracle discovered the incident in February. 11 months.
That delay is the engine of these class action suits. The lawsuits argue, and it's a very strong legal position, that this 11-month lag deprived victims of the information they needed to mitigate their risk of identity theft or fraud in a timely way.
In HIPAA breach notification statutes, they require notification without undue delay, and no later than 60 days from discovery. An 11-month delay is a clear failure.
A massive failure to meet basic regulatory deadlines. And this throws a spotlight directly onto the burden of notification under the HIPAA business associate rules.
So Oracle Health, as the vendor providing the EHR services and maintaining the PHI, they're legally a business associate, a BA, to the hospitals.
And the hospitals are the covered entities, or CEs.
Right. And the source material highlights Oracle Health's explicit and I'd say arguably self-serving approach to this. They told their clients it was their responsibility, the hospitals, to figure out if a reportable breach happened and to issue the notifications.
Legally, that's correct. The CE has the final notification duty. However, a business associate must notify the covered entity within 60 days of its own discovery.
And then the CE has its own 60 days from receiving that notice to notify the people.
Right. But if the BA drags its feet on providing the necessary data like the validated final list of affected patients or just the scope of the incident, the CE is effectively paralyzed. They can't comply with their 60-day rule, which makes them vulnerable to regulatory action too.
And there's even evidence in the sources that suggests Oracle Health was trying to subtly distance itself from the breach of the old Cerner data.
I saw that. The source notes that the notification letters sent to the customers were reportedly signed by an executive VP, but they weren't on headed company paper.
That's a red flag.
And customers were told to call the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, directly avoiding standard customer service channels. That definitely suggests an attempt to control the narrative and limit clear corporate legal association with the breach.
And all this behavior, it just catalyzed the legal reckoning. The class action lawsuits filed in Missouri and Texas, they're seeking justice for these alleged failures.
hmm And the core allegations are pretty comprehensive. They point directly to organizational failures after that massive acquisition.
They claim negligence, specifically citing Oracle's failure to secure servers after the $28.3 billion Cerner deal. The argument is that Oracle bought a huge trove of sensitive data, but failed to implement basic post-acquisition security protocols.
Like decommissioning the legacy systems or isolating them with network segmentation until the migration was done.
And beyond that general negligence, the lawsuits get really specific technically. They're citing a failure to secure systems via adequate network segmentation, insufficient staff training for the Cerner environment.
A lack of continuous monitoring systems that could have caught the intrusion earlier than 30 days.
Right, and crucially, violation of state breach notification laws like the ones in Texas.
And the relief they're seeking here, it goes far beyond just simple monetary damages.
While plaintiffs are demanding compensatory damages, reimbursement for out-of-pocket losses, and long-term credit monitoring, they're also asking for something incredibly powerful: injunctive relief.
Injunctive relief is key because it forces mandated court-ordered change. It affects all future customers and systems. The court is being asked to order Oracle Health to implement specific long-term security improvements.
And this isn't just a suggestion. It would be a security overhaul enforced by the judiciary.
Precisely.
So what does a court-ordered security overhaul practically mean? What would that look like?
It forces specificity. For instance, the relief often demands mandatory data encryption, not just in transit, which is standard, but at rest within the databases themselves. It would require regular, independent penetration tests, maybe quarterly, done by a third-party security firm, not just internal checks.
So an outside perspective.
Yes, it would demand comprehensive third-party security audits of both physical and logical access controls and enhanced measurable security awareness training programs for every employee who touches these systems.
Wow.
If that's granted, it sets a very high and very expensive precedent for all other large business associates who acquire companies with legacy infrastructure. It's forcing them to spend the money to fix the problem they created.
Here's where it gets really interesting. As we kind of pivot back to Incident B, the credential breach, to talk about the broader security implications, this goes beyond healthcare and really impacts every large enterprise that relies on Oracle services.
The fact that CISA, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, had to issue a security alert in April 2025, I mean, that speaks volumes about how severe this second incident was.
So CISA confirmed that the breach of the Gen 1, the classic cloud, posed a significant identifiable risk to enterprise environments. Why? Because compromised credentials and encryption keys were exposed and are now just out there in the wild.
And let's talk about the credential threat. This isn't just about identity theft. This is military-grade reconnaissance for attackers.
What do you mean by that?
Threat actors meticulously harvest and weaponize credentials. Stolen data is often enriched with information from other breaches, sold in bulk, or used to conduct really sophisticated attacks like business email compromise or BEC.
Advanced phishing.
Right? Or, most dangerously, to escalate privileges and move laterally within a target's network.
So credentials, especially those tied to older, less monitored systems like the Gen 1 cloud, are basically invaluable gateways for attackers.
They're gold. If access tokens or critically encryption keys were compromised, as the sources suggest, unauthorized actors could potentially use that material for long-term, persistent access to any enterprise environment that relied on that obsolete cloud platform.
So it creates a kind of ghost in the machine scenario where the attacker has a key and can just walk in, often undetected, long after the initial breach.
That's exactly it. And because of this high latent risk to enterprise security, CISA provided very specific actionable guidance for Oracle customers. And this is essential listening for anyone managing an enterprise network, no matter what vendor you use.
These are the suggested mitigations, the expert guide for you, our listeners.
The first and most fundamental step is resetting passwords across enterprise servers. This is vital, especially where local system credentials may not have been federated or managed by a modern identity solution.
So if the Gen 1 system housed that credential or had access to a synchronizing password store.
You have to treat that credential as toxic. Burn it immediately across all relevant systems.
Okay. And second, and this is where security often fails, Organizations have to review source code, infrastructure as code templates, and automation templates. Why go that deep into the code?
Because threat actors know to look for credentials that have been inadvertently embedded in scripts or configuration files. It's a practice that might have been acceptable on older platforms, but it's a massive liability now.
Right.
These embedded, hard-coded credentials have to be found and replaced with secure dynamic authentication methods, like using secret management vaults or certificates. This is that long-term access vector CISA specifically warned about. It's often overlooked.
And third, they recommended continuous active monitoring of authentication logs for anomalous activity.
This is where systems management really shines. Monitoring should specifically focus on usage patterns of privileged accounts, service accounts, or federated identity accounts.
Because attackers rarely use a stolen credential exactly like the legitimate user would.
Never. You have to look for spikes in access attempts, connections from unusual geographic locations, or access happening at strange non-business hours. These are the classic signs that network monitoring systems are built to catch.
And finally, the ultimate defense against compromised credentials, which is especially important with all the phishing out there.
Is implementing and enforcing phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, or MFA, particularly for administrator accounts.
And we should stress not all MFA is equal.
Not at all. Simple SMS-based MFA can be socially engineered or phished pretty easily. Phishing-resistant methods like hardware keys, a YubiKey for example, or certificate-based MFA are what's necessary to stop attackers who might steal a one-time passcode through a sophisticated phishing site.
So that's the gold standard for protecting against unauthorized access. It neutralizes the threat posed by those stolen hashes.
It is. It's the best defense you have.
If we connect all this directly to the bigger picture, the Oracle Health breach really serves as a powerful, multi-million-dollar case study for why robust, detailed APA compliance is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to vendor oversight and sunsetting legacy systems. We can use the source material not just to describe the failure, but to provide actionable compliance knowledge, explaining why these standards exist and why they are the crucial defensive line against future incidents like this one.
Okay, so let's start with the security rule. Technical safeguards and contingency. These are the physical and digital mechanisms designed to protect electronic protected health information, or EPHI.
And the simplest, yet most often overlooked safeguard is automatic log-off.
Seems basic.
It is, but the source material stresses how essential it is to prevent unauthorized users from accessing EPHI when a device is unattended, or if a laptop or tablet is lost or stolen.
In a busy hospital environment, a device left logged in for just 15 minutes is basically an open door for a physical intrusion, which then becomes a digital breach.
Precisely. This feature is fundamental in making sure device loss doesn't immediately translate to data loss.
And tied directly to user behavior is the strict prohibition against credential sharing.
And this isn't a rule for HR convenience. It's a critical security and auditing requirement. Sharing login credentials eliminates the usefulness of mandatory audit logs and access reports.
So if a breach happens, you can't establish accountability because the log just shows user X accessed the record when it might have been user Y or Z using that account.
Exactly. It makes effective investigation impossible, and it's a massive failure in the eyes of the HHS Office for Civil Rights, the OCR.
Then we have contingency planning, which is all about organizational resilience and business continuity after something happens.
Right. The security rule requires covered entities and their business associates to implement and, crucially, test three critical plans: a robust data backup plan, an emergency mode operations plan, which is how you continue patient care during an outage, and a full disaster recovery plan.
And these are designed to ensure the integrity and availability of EPHI during any disaster, whether it's a flood, a fire, or, like in this case, a major ransomware attack or data exfiltration event.
And testing is the key. A plan that's just sitting on a shelf is totally useless when disaster strikes.
And internal security is just as important as external defense. Let's talk about access policies.
Yes, they have to be dynamic and rigorous. They need to cater not just to current roles, but to frequently changing situations like promotions, transfers, time off, and most importantly, terminations.
So the policies have to include immediate, automated procedures for terminating a departing staff member's access to EPHI.
Instantly, to ensure they can't access the organization's sensitive data remotely once they leave. The failure to deactivate an account is a classic low-tech way for a security incident to begin.
Let's move to the administrative safeguards. This is the management layer where leadership has to ensure compliance is really baked into the culture and is properly documented.
And the very first standard of the security rule is the requirement for a functional security management process. This is the organizational bedrock that should have prevented the Cerner legacy failure.
And what does that consist of?
It must consist of a thorough risk analysis, an action remediation plan to address any vulnerabilities you find, a defined sanctions policy for when people violate the rules, and regular procedures to review information system activity.
Let's elaborate on what a documented risk analysis actually is. It's not just a checklist, right?
Not at all. It requires asset identification. What systems even hold PHI? Then threat modeling, who would attack us and why? A vulnerability assessment, where are our weak points, like say obsolete servers? And finally, a likelihood and impact scoring system.
And this whole process, including the remediation plan that comes out of it, has to be formally documented and stored for at least 6 years.
Yes, not just for compliance, but for your legal defense if an OCR investigation ever happens. That documentation is the proof that you were diligent.
Okay, the application of sanctions. This seems like a critical enforcement tool that's often overlooked.
It is. Sanctions ensure that workforce members don't take compliance shortcuts, like using shared passwords or emailing PHI to their personal accounts just to speed up their job.
And that shortcut culture can quickly deteriorate into systemic non-compliance.
It does. And the sanctions have to be relevant and progressive. A verbal warning for a minor first-time offense versus a much harsher penalty, like suspension or termination, for a serious or repeated violation.
And I imagine they have to be applied consistently.
Absolutely. Consistently and fairly, regardless of the employee's position. If the CIO is allowed to bypass a security policy, but a nurse is penalized for the same action, the sanctions policy is worthless, and it undermines the entire culture of compliance.
Next up is ongoing training. This feels vital for a couple of key reasons.
It is. First, training must be provided to all members of the workforce because, as CISA warned, an attacker can get into a network via a device that doesn't even have direct access to ePHI and then just move laterally until they find the sensitive database. Everyone is a potential security risk.
And the second reason?
The continuous evolving nature of cyber threats. Training has to be ongoing because detection software is fallible. It's constantly playing catch-up. Users must be continuously informed about the latest threats, how to recognize and report phishing emails, for example. Because if the security software misses the threat, the informed, alert human is the last, most critical line of defense.
You're essentially teaching your workforce how to perform security triage.
That's a great way to put it.
And that training has to be timely. It has to be provided to new workforce members, even if they had a similar role somewhere else.
That's right. The source points out that some states, like Texas, require this training within 90 days of employment. You can't rely on someone's previous employer's compliance standards.
And of course, the documentation proof of that training is essential.
You have to track who received what training, when refresher training is due, and critically, you have to be able to demonstrate proof during an OCR investigation that you fulfilled your educational duty. No documentation, no proof.
Okay, let's shift to the privacy rule and patient rights. The Oracle Health breach was mainly a security failure, but the privacy rule dictates how organizations have to treat patient information internally and how they respond to patient requests.
And failures there also trigger OCR action. The source material focuses heavily on the need for procedures in responding to patient rights.
So this is about being able to quickly and accurately respond to a patient's request for access to their PHI, or a request for an accounting of disclosures, who saw their data and why.
Exactly. And failure to respond to these requests within the legally allowed timeframes has been the #1 reason for formal complaints to HHS's Office for Civil Rights in recent years. Procedures also have to verify patient identity accurately to prevent identity fraud.
There's also the fundamental minimum necessary standard.
Right. This requires that when you're using or disclosing PHI, you only use or disclose the minimum amount of information necessary to achieve the purpose. It's a foundational principle to better protect privacy.
So if a billing department only needs the patient's name and the services rendered, they shouldn't have access to the patient's full mental health history.
Precisely. Although the source also warns that applying this standard too rigidly can cause communication challenges among clinical staff. So it's a delicate policy balance that needs internal review.
And we also have to make sure that HIPAA authorization forms and notices of privacy practices, or MPPs, are legally sound.
Oh, absolutely. Authorization forms have to strictly comply with specific sections of the privacy rule to be valid. They need core elements like a description of the information, the purpose, and expiration date. If the form is missing core elements, the authorization is invalid, and any disclosure made using it is an impermissible use of PHI.
And similarly, NTPs, which advise patients of their privacy rights, have to be reviewed and amended whenever a material change affects those rights.
And then redistributed or redisplayed immediately to make sure patients are always aware of their current rights under IMPALA.
And now we come full circle, right back to the core issue of this specific breach: business associate compliance, the Oracle Cerner model. This is where that 11-month delay was born.
It is. Identifying your BAs is the absolutely critical first step for any covered entity. Organizations have to identify every single vendor, from EHR providers like Oracle Health to shredding services, that creates, receives, maintains, or transmits PHI for them.
And if that vendor is a BA, a HIPAB business associate agreement, a BAA, must be executed before any PHI is shared.
And if that agreement is invalid or non-existent, the sharing of PHI is automatically a violation of a DHI period, regardless of whether a breach ever occurs.
And the responsibility doesn't stop once the BAA is signed.
Not at all. Covered entities must actively engage in monitoring of their BA's compliance. This is the crucial takeaway from the Oracle incident. The rule is clear. CEs can be held liable if they knew or by exercising reasonable diligence should have known of a material violation by the BA.
So passive reliance on a massive vendor like Oracle Health is just not enough. You have to be proactively ensuring their security posture is maintained, audited, and tested.
Especially after a major acquisition that introduces a whole lot of legacy system risk.
And that proactive monitoring leads right into the final set of compliance lessons, which are all about transparency, breach reporting, and transparency.
Organizations need to know how to precisely calculate the likelihood of a notifiable breach. Not every impermissible use or disclosure qualifies.
So being able to correctly apply the breach risk assessment exclusion criteria saves time and money.
And potentially avoids a full compliance review by the OCR. But when a reportable breach does happen, proving compliance with the notification requirements is necessary, as the lawsuits against Oracle Health show.
That documentation ensures individuals are not overlooked in the required time frame, mitigating their risk of identity theft before they can protect themselves.
And Oracle's failure to provide that data list for 11 months was a massive breakdown in that essential step.
And one final best practice, which isn't strictly required by HIPAA but is strongly encouraged: anonymous reporting.
It's a great tool. While it's not mandatory, an internal anonymous reporting channel encourages the workforce to speak out immediately when they see a violation or a vulnerability without fear of retaliation.
So it allows an organization to find and fix internal threats before they become public breaches.
Exactly. But if you do implement it, any PHI contained within that anonymous report still has to be safeguarded against unauthorized access, loss, and theft.
Wow. This deep dive has spanned, the gamut of corporate acquisitions, the hidden risks of legacy infrastructure, sophisticated credential theft, and fundamental patient privacy law. Let's quickly recap the core complexity we decoded here. We had two distinct Oracle breaches: the massive PHI theft tied to the Cerner legacy servers, which was Incident A,
And the widespread credential leak from the obsolete Cloud Classic systems, Incident B.
and those incidents, they culminated in a massive patient crisis affecting potentially 80 hospitals. And it was all driven into the legal system by a staggering near 11-month delay in notification for some victims.
Right. The sources clearly lay out that this failure stemmed from Oracle Health, a business associate, not fulfilling its notification obligations in a timely manner, and then attempting to improperly shift that legal burden onto the covered entities who were, well, they were powerless without the data.
So the final key takeaway for you, the learner, is that critical difference between modern flagship cloud infrastructure like OCI, which is defended fiercely, and those vulnerable legacy servers, which became the weakest, most exposed link.
And the lesson in compliance is absolute. Robust business associate monitoring and rapid breach notification are essential, even when you're delegating duties. The clock starts ticking the moment discovery happens, not when the data dump is finally finished.
We've seen the severe financial and legal consequences of insufficient security when you're merging massive data stores.
We have. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought, which is really the core challenge highlighted by that $28.3 billion Cerner acquisition.
Okay.
How do organizations, especially those in healthcare, truly balance the need for rapid growth and aggressive acquisition strategies, buying up huge companies and their entrenched legacy IT with the non-negotiable long-term security requirement of responsibly migrating, segmenting, or decommissioning those obsolete systems that contain highly sensitive patient data.
That tension between speed, scale, and security.
That is the fundamental friction point that, if it's not solved proactively, guarantees exactly this type of major security failure.
That tension is the hidden cost of modern corporate mergers. Thank you for diving deep with us. We will catch you next time.